Hello, welcome back. I think timeline-wise you will be seeing this just after Christmas, so I hope it went well and Santa was good to you and all of that kind of stuff. And if you are watching this on our YouTube channel at some point in the future, well, it doesn't matter, this will make no sense to you. But what I want to do to start the year off is a few people have asked me, we've mentioned in a few of our videos something called Lego hands. And it appears we haven't explained what this is at any point, so it's a bit of an odd phrase to have used. So a few people have asked us what this is, so I'll sort of start this year off before we move on to our actual videos going forward, which we're going to be looking at, I think, side sword and buckler for the first part of this year. I thought I would explain Lego hands. Now, it actually comes from our old friend, Monstery. So if you've watched any of our boxing tutorials or anything, you'll have come across Monstery already. So I shall read you what Monstery says, and this is from his section on how to do sparring. But he says, the general rules are simple. A set to should be taken in a gentlemanly manner. Do not clench the fist tight, but strike with the back of the fingers, hands partly open so that fingers will yield to the blow. To clench the fist makes the blow harder but no straighter. And a set to should be conducted in exactly the same as a fist fight, except that the fist should not be clenched. Thus conducted, it improves the boxer. So, what he is saying is that if I was to punch Ian, I'd then probably get killed, but for the purposes of this demonstration, if I punch Ian with my fist clenched here, I can land a blow and it's solid, I can put my weight into it and all the rest of it. That's fine, it does the damage, but when I'm training, we don't actually want to be constantly hitting each other with that power. So instead, what I'm going to do is use Lego hands. We're going to have our hands slightly open. That means when I punch, I can get exactly the same alignment and power behind it, but now that force goes into the squidging of my hands rather than into Ian's ribcage. So this is how Lego hands works, and it means that we can then essentially fight, because I can quite happily take punches into Ian, and I'm doing this at the range, speed and relative power that I would do in a real fight. It's just my hands are nice and flexible and taking up all the power, rather than constantly powering into each other. So the advantage of that is it means we don't wear gloves, which means you don't get into this false sensation that I can just punch anywhere and it's absolutely fine. Because if I don't have gloves, I start to think actually the face looks a bit bony if I'm not wearing gloves. Whereas when I'm wearing boxing gloves, yeah, I can wear all day. But it makes me think about my targets and makes me be a bit more realistic in my actions if I'm used to actually fighting with empty hands. But obviously to do that, we need to employ these Lego hands. Now, this also is useful for if we're dealing with something like cane, which I have brought, but it's in my bag. 1 second. Run across the room.
Can't get the instructors.
I know, I just never think these things through before I start. So, if we have, like a cane, if we were doing dignate, we have one of our main strikes is I would drop down from here into my opponent's solar plexus with the full weight of my body behind it. Now, if I do that, especially if you have a bit of body weight like I do, that's going to really mess up Ian. He's not coming back to training for the next few weeks. Probably never, because that's a bit of a dick thing to do. So, what instead I'm going to do is when I thrust with this, I'm going to use my Lego hands. So when I thrust, I relax my hand, so I can still deliver the technique with full power, but now it slides through my hand rather than sliding through Ian, which is much better for everybody involved. So, this kind of idea of Lego hands is quite useful if you want to train in a way that's a bit more realistic, allows you full access to techniques, but without having to pad up and take away that aspect of it. But also keeps you relatively safe and uninjured. So that's what Lego hands is. Hopefully you found that interesting, and we'll be back next week when we're going to start talking about side sword and buckler. And thank you very much to Ian for letting me punch him several times. That is the most I've ever punched him in a 5-minute period since we've started sparring together. So, hope you've had a good Christmas, and I'll catch you next week.